The absence of friends reveals what almost no one understands. Stay with me, because this truth is uncomfortable, confronting, and deeply rooted in Jewish wisdom. The kind of wisdom most people avoid because it strips away comforting illusions. For most of your life, you were taught to believe that having people around you is proof that you matter. Friends, contacts, messages, invitations, all of it feels like validation. When your phone is silent, when no one checks in, when days pass without a single message, something inside you starts to panic. You don't just feel lonely, you feel invisible, replaceable, forgotten. Jewish wisdom looks at this moment very differently. It does not ask, who abandoned you? It asks, what is being revealed now that the noise is gone? Because when friends disappear, distractions disappear with them. And what remains is not emptiness, it is exposure. You are finally alone with your thoughts, your fears, your unfulfilled ambitions, and the parts of yourself you kept hidden behind conversations and social approval. That is why loneliness feels so threatening. It removes the audience you were performing for. Most people run from this stage immediately. They fill the silence with social media, shallow conversations, meaningless meetings, anything to avoid sitting with themselves. But Jewish wisdom teaches something radical. Isolation is not a punishment. It is a test, and more than that, it is an invitation, an invitation to see who you are without applause. An invitation to confront whether your life is built on inner strength or borrowed attention. An invitation to discover whether you actually know yourself or only know how to be liked. This is why the absence of friends hurts so deeply. It is not the lack of people that wounds you, it is the collapse of the identity you were leaning on. And until you understand this, you will keep chasing people instead of building yourself. If you stay until the end of this video, I will show you why the periods when no one stands beside you are often the exact moments your real strength is formed. I will explain, through experience and Jewish wisdom, how loneliness exposes truth, builds independence, and filters your life in ways comfort never could. And if this message resonates with you, subscribe now. Not for motivation, not for comfort, but for clarity. Because clarity changes lives. Let's begin with the first truth most people refuse to face. Most people experience the absence of friends as a verdict. A silent judgment that says, something is wrong with you. If no one calls, if no one checks in, if weekends feel empty, the mind immediately looks for blame, and it almost always turns inward. You start asking dangerous questions. Am I boring? Am I not important enough? Did I fail socially? Jewish wisdom warns us about this trap. It teaches that humans confuse signals with truth. Loneliness is not a diagnosis of your worth. It is a signal of transition. But because we live in a world obsessed with visibility and approval, that signal is misinterpreted as failure. Think about it honestly. Many friendships are not built on depth or loyalty. They are built on convenience, shared environments, mutual benefit, habit. When circumstances change, people disappear. Not because you are unworthy, but because the structure that held the connection together collapsed. Jewish sages understood this long before social media existed. They warned that most bonds dissolve when usefulness ends. This is why loneliness hits hardest when you stop being needed. When you are no longer the one who listens, helps, supports, entertains, or validates others. Suddenly the silence feels personal. But it is not personal. It is revealing. The pain comes from a hidden dependency. You depended on people to confirm your existence. And when that confirmation vanished, your inner foundation cracked. This is uncomfortable to admit, but it is essential. Because you cannot build strength on top of dependency. Jewish wisdom is brutally honest about this. It teaches that as long as your identity is externally supported, it is fragile. You may feel surrounded, but you are weak. You may feel liked, but you are not grounded. Real stability begins only when external reinforcement is removed. This is why loneliness often arrives before growth, before clarity, before transformation. It strips life down to essentials. It removes distractions. It forces a confrontation you cannot postpone. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one needs you? Who are you when approval is no longer available? Most people try to escape these questions as fast as possible. They rush back into noise, into shallow connections, into anything that numbs the discomfort. But Jewish wisdom teaches the opposite response. Stay, observe, learn, because loneliness is not telling you that you are failing. It is telling you that an old version of you can no longer survive. And that is where the real work begins. There is a moment in loneliness that almost everyone tries to avoid. A moment when you stop checking your phone, when you stop hoping someone will reach out, when you finally accept that today, and maybe tomorrow, no one is coming. This moment is dangerous, not because it destroys you, but because it exposes you. Jewish wisdom teaches that noise hides truth. Crowds blur identity. Constant interaction allows a person to escape themselves. You can talk, joke, help, advise, and distract, all without ever asking the most uncomfortable question: am I living my own life, or a life designed to keep me accepted? When people disappear, that escape route closes. You are left alone with patterns you ignored for years, thoughts you suppressed, desires you postponed, regrets you buried under activity. This is why loneliness often feels heavier at night. The world goes quiet, and your inner world becomes loud. Most people discover something disturbing in this silence. They realize how much of their behavior was performative, how many choices were made to be liked rather than respected, how often they said yes when they wanted to say no, just to remain included. Jewish wisdom does not condemn this, it explains it. Humans seek belonging before truth, but maturity begins when truth becomes more important than belonging. Loneliness forces this shift. Without witnesses, masks lose their function. You no longer gain anything from pretending. And that is when honesty finally becomes possible. This is also when fear surfaces. Fear of being ordinary, fear of wasted potential, fear that without people around you, there is nothing impressive left. This fear is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are finally seeing yourself clearly. In Jewish thought, self-knowledge always comes before self-respect. You cannot respect a self you have never met, and you cannot meet yourself while constantly surrounded by distractions. This is why periods without friends often precede major internal shifts. Careers change, values rearrange, priorities collapse and rebuild. It feels destabilizing because it is. But destruction of false structure is not loss, it is preparation. Most people try to return to their old social life as quickly as possible, even if it was hollow. Jewish wisdom advises restraint. Do not rush back into noise just because silence is uncomfortable. If people have vanished from your life, do not immediately ask how to get them back. Ask instead what part of you needed their presence to avoid looking inward, because when the crowd leaves, the truth stays. And if you can tolerate that truth, you begin to develop something rare: inner authority. And without inner authority, no relationship will ever feel secure. There is an uncomfortable truth most people never admit. Many do not want friends, they want emotional insurance. Someone to lean on, someone to confirm their choices, someone to absorb fear, doubt, and responsibility. Jewish wisdom is ruthless about this. It teaches that dependence feels like connection, but it slowly destroys inner strength. The more you rely on others to stabilize your emotions, the less capable you become of standing on your own. This is why the loss of friends can feel like collapse. You were not just losing people, you were losing support structures that carried weight you never learned to carry yourself. Think carefully about this. If your peace disappears the moment people leave, then your peace never belonged to you. It was outsourced, borrowed, conditional. Jewish thinkers warned against this centuries ago. They taught that a person who cannot be alone cannot be trusted with power, responsibility, or leadership. Because the one who needs constant reassurance will eventually surrender truth for comfort. This is how weakness forms. Not through lack of talent or intelligence, but through avoidance of inner confrontation. As long as someone else absorbs your uncertainty, you never develop resilience. Loneliness removes that buffer. Suddenly there is no one to blame, no one to reassure you, no one to distract you from doubt. And for the first time, you are forced to build internal structure instead of leaning outward. This process feels brutal. Anxiety increases. Old insecurities resurface. The mind searches desperately for escape. But this stage is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to separate those who grow from those who regress. Jewish wisdom does not promise relief, it promises strength. And strength is always forged under pressure. This is why people who survive loneliness without numbing themselves emerge different. Calmer, sharper, less reactive. They stop chasing approval because they no longer require it to feel real. And here is the shift most people miss. Once you stop needing friends to stabilize you, your relationships change completely. You no longer cling. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You no longer trade authenticity for acceptance. You become selective, and selection is power. Loneliness weakens those who resist it. But for those who endure it honestly, it builds something rare: self-contained stability. And without self-contained stability, no friendship can ever be healthy. Most people believe they choose their friends. Jewish wisdom argues the opposite. It says life chooses for you. And loneliness is one of its sharpest tools. When you are socially active, surrounded by people, constantly available, you attract everyone. The sincere and the opportunistic, the loyal and the bored, the honest and the ones who simply need something from you. In noise, all faces look similar. Loneliness changes this instantly. When you stop calling first, when you stop initiating, when you stop being useful, entertaining, or emotionally available on demand, most people vanish without explanation. And this disappearance feels cruel only if you misunderstand its purpose. Jewish wisdom teaches that absence reveals intention. Those who are present out of habit, convenience, or benefit fade quietly. Those who remain do so for reasons that survive discomfort. This is why loneliness feels like loss at first. You are watching volume turn into silence, numbers collapse, familiar names disappear. But what is actually happening is filtration. You are not losing people, you are losing illusions. Most relationships cannot survive stillness. They require activity, favors, shared routines, or emotional labor to stay alive. Remove those, and the bond dissolves. This is not betrayal. It is exposure. Here is where many people make a critical mistake. They try to restore the old social structure. They reach out desperately. They overextend. They reinsert themselves into dynamics that already failed, just to avoid the discomfort of emptiness. Jewish wisdom calls this regression. Returning to what weakened you simply because it felt familiar. Loneliness is teaching you discernment. It is showing you who values your presence and who valued your function, who respects your boundaries and who only tolerated them when it was convenient. After this phase, you stop measuring relationships by frequency and start measuring them by substance. One honest connection outweighs 10 performative ones. One person who respects your silence is more valuable than many who only enjoy your availability. This is also why people who survive loneliness often appear colder from the outside. They are not colder. They are clearer. They no longer confuse attention with loyalty or proximity with commitment. Jewish wisdom never praises popularity. It praises alignment. Being surrounded by the wrong people is not abundance. It is dilution. Loneliness concentrates your life. It removes excess. It leaves only what can stand without maintenance. And whatever survives this filter deserves a place beside you. After the noise fades, after people disappear, after illusions collapse, something uncomfortable remains. Silence. And within that silence, responsibility shifts. There is no one left to blame, no one to impress, no one to lean on emotionally. This is where most people break or mature. Jewish wisdom places enormous value on inner authority. It teaches that a person who cannot govern themselves will always be governed by others, by opinions, by fear, by the need to belong. And loneliness is the environment where self-governance is either developed or avoided. When you are alone for long enough, you begin to notice how often you looked outward for permission. Permission to rest, permission to want more, permission to change direction. Without people around, permission must come from within, or not at all. This is deeply unsettling. Many discover they do not trust themselves. They second-guess every thought. They feel lost without external feedback. This is not a flaw. It is evidence that inner authority was never trained. Loneliness trains it. Day by day, decision by decision, you learn to rely on your own judgment. You listen more carefully to your instincts. You stop explaining yourself to imaginary audiences. You begin to act based on alignment rather than approval. Jewish wisdom teaches that clarity precedes confidence. You do not become confident by repeating affirmations. You become confident by surviving uncertainty without collapsing. This is why people who pass through loneliness with awareness develop a quiet firmness. They speak less but mean more. They tolerate less nonsense. They move slower, but with intention. And this inner authority changes how others respond to you. People sense it, not consciously, but instinctively. You no longer feel needy. You no longer chase validation. Your presence is no longer asking for something. It is grounded. Ironically, this is often when people begin to return. Old contacts resurface, new connections appear. But now the power dynamic has shifted. You are no longer looking for someone to complete you. You are evaluating whether someone belongs beside you. Loneliness did not make you cold, it made you sovereign. And sovereignty is the foundation of every healthy relationship. Once inner authority begins to form, loneliness stops feeling like a wound and starts functioning like a tool. This is the phase where most people lose the advantage, because they rush back into noise too quickly. Jewish wisdom teaches restraint at this stage. When clarity appears, do not dilute it. When silence sharpens your thinking, protect it. This is not the time to refill your life with random people just to feel normal again. Loneliness gives you something rare, uninterrupted access to your own mind. Without constant social input, your thoughts slow down. Patterns become visible. You begin to notice what drains you and what strengthens you. This is where strategy is born. Instead of asking, how do I meet more people? The wiser question becomes, what kind of life am I building that determines who enters it? Jewish wisdom always starts from structure, not attraction. Build the right inner and external structure, and the right people appear naturally. Practically, this means using loneliness deliberately. Set time blocks without distraction. Walk alone without headphones. Write without an audience in mind. Train your body without performing progress for anyone else. These acts seem small, but they rebuild autonomy at a deep level. Loneliness also exposes wasted effort. You begin to see how much energy you previously spent maintaining weak connections, explaining yourself, smoothing conflicts that never should have existed. When you are alone, that energy returns to you. Jewish thought treats energy as sacred. Where you place it determines who you become. Loneliness returns misplaced energy back to its owner. This is also the stage where goals become sharper. Not goals borrowed from peers, not ambitions designed to impress, but goals that survive silence. If a desire still matters when no one knows about it, it is probably real. Use loneliness to audit your life, your habits, your direction, your commitments. Remove what cannot stand without social reinforcement. Here's the paradox most people miss. When loneliness is used consciously, it shortens the path to meaningful connection. You stop wasting years in environments that do not fit you. Jewish wisdom calls this alignment. When your inner structure is clear, the outer world adjusts. Loneliness, when used correctly, does not isolate you from life. It positions you precisely within it. And this is where people finally understand. Absence of friends was never the problem. Lack of direction was. With direction, loneliness becomes leverage. After true loneliness, something breaks permanently, not in a bad way, in an irreversible way. You lose the ability to tolerate shallow connection. Once you have sat in silence long enough to hear your own thoughts clearly, small talk feels exhausting. Once you have learned to regulate your emotions without external support, emotional chaos in others becomes obvious. Once you have built inner authority, dependency looks dangerous. Jewish wisdom speaks about this shift directly. It says that when a person outgrows a vessel, returning to it causes suffering. Old friendships may still exist, but they no longer fit who you are becoming. This is where many people feel guilt. They think something is wrong with them. They believe they have become cold, distant, arrogant. In reality, they have become selective. After loneliness, you no longer bond through shared distraction. You bond through shared values, through honesty, through mutual respect for boundaries and silence. You stop chasing intensity. You start valuing stability. This is also why some people react negatively to your change. Your calm exposes their chaos. Your independence highlights their dependence. Your ability to walk alone threatens those who cannot. Jewish wisdom warns not to explain yourself at this stage. Those who understand do not need explanations. Those who demand them usually benefited from your former weakness. Relationships after loneliness are fewer, but stronger. Slower, but deeper. You no longer need constant presence to feel connection. You no longer confuse closeness with obligation. And here is the most important transformation. You stop being afraid of loss. When you know you can stand alone, You are no longer hostage to abandonment. This does not make you isolated, it makes you free. This is why loneliness is often the final test before real connection. Only those who do not fear being alone can choose others honestly. And once you reach this point, you understand something most people never do. Friends do not give your life meaning. Your life gives meaning to friendships. If you have stayed until this point, then you already understand something most people never allow themselves to face. The absence of friends is not a sign that your life is failing. It is a sign that your life is being stripped down to truth. Jewish wisdom teaches that nothing valuable is built in noise. Depth requires silence, strength requires resistance, clarity requires isolation. When friends disappear, comfort disappears with them. But so do illusions, so does dependency. So does the constant need to perform, please, and explain. Loneliness forces the most important shift a human being can make. From external validation to internal authority. From belonging to alignment. From fear of loss to freedom of choice. This is why the absence of friends feels so intense. It is not emptiness you are feeling, it is the collapse of a false structure, and collapse is painful. But collapse is also honest. Jewish wisdom does not promise that this path will feel good. It promises that it will make you real. Once you can stand alone, friendships stop being survival tools and become conscious choices. You no longer need people to escape yourself. You invite people to walk beside you. That is the difference. So if you are in a season where no one calls, no one checks in, and silence surrounds you, do not rush to escape it. Do not label yourself as broken. Do not beg the world for attention. Use this time. Build inner authority. Clarify your direction. Remove what cannot survive truth. Because when this phase ends, and it always ends, you will not return to who you were before. You will return stronger, quieter, more selective, and the people who enter your life then will not be many, but they will be real. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Here we speak about truth, discipline, and wisdom that is not designed to comfort, but to strengthen. And tell me in the comments, did loneliness break you, or did it reveal you?